and stuff, but there's an opportunity to expand the programs.
Okay, we are streaming now.
Okay.
And Sheldon, if you can give me some host rights back, I'll screen share then.
Oh, yes, let me.
Okay, we are streaming now. Sheldon, if you
Yep.
can give me some host rights
Co-host.
back, I'll screen share then.
You got it. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can all see the agenda.
You got it.
Okay, very good. So the first item on the agenda is,
Melanie, we're getting a feedback like delayed about 5 seconds.
okay, does somebody in the area have it streaming on YouTube?
I think it's coming from Sheldon's.
Yep, if he could close his door, maybe that'll help. Does somebody in the area have it streaming on YouTube?
Oh.
Sheldon, I'm gonna mute Sheldon. I think that's what it was. I could hear my voice and I can't stand it, so. All right. Sorry about that. So we have the Bonadeo group with us this evening, and they are here to review the results of the draft internal audit report. I will turn it over to Heather and Spencer from the Bonadeo group, and I do have the report here, so I can share that as well on the screen so everybody can follow along. So Heather, you can take it away.
Good evening, everybody. If you could just go to page 4, I think that will start us out. Page 4 of the PDF. There we go. This really talks about our testing. So we came in, Spencer came out actually on site to look at the capital asset procedures at the BOCES. Basically, we did a deep dive into the internal controls and the processes and procedures surrounding the recording, where fixed assets are they still with the district, those kinds of things. So if you scroll down a little bit, Melanie, to the procedures and testing, sorry. What we did is we reviewed the 6/30/20 fixed asset listing, since we're kind of in the middle of the year, and usually you do it once a year. We looked to see that the capital assets listed there met the capitalization threshold. We did select a sample and visit the locations where they were listed to be to see if they existed at those locations. We reviewed the detail of what we call in the accounting world, the 0.2 and the 0.4 accounts, and those are where equipment purchases are recorded and contractual expenditures in both the general and capital projects funds, mainly where you would see things that would be put onto the fixed asset ledger. We reviewed the disposals for accuracy by tracing each disposal to the capital asset listing to verify that the asset was noted as disposed. And we agreed the total disposals, the total additions, the construction in process, and the book value from that listing to the financial statements. Scroll down for me, please. So our results, or our recommendations that we have based on what we did, when we looked at the capitalization thresholds that are listed there, the 25 for land improvements, 50,000 for buildings, 5,000 for furniture and equipment. We did note one instance of a walk-in cooler that was $534. So it was one instance. So we just recommend that the capital asset listing on an annual basis just be, just peruse through it and make sure that you don't see anything on there that really shouldn't be on there.
Heather, just to clarify, the concern with the cooler was that it was just valued too low to be on there, correct?
Yeah, so when you have a capitalization threshold of those items, so the walk-in cooler is probably under furniture and equipment of 5,000, we wouldn't think to see anything under that dollar purchase value, not net book value, purchase value. So
Right.
if purchased that cooler for 5,000, yes. If you didn't, no.
Okay.
B would be the existence and identification. So this is where we selected those assets and we went on site to see that they were at that specific location. And also that they had the actual asset tag on them that identified them. So on your capital asset listing, you'll notice that every asset has a tag number. So we looked to see that that was on there. There was one instance where a printing press, it had been sent to auction after year end. So that was not viewable, but that's a reasonable thing to have happened. There was one instance where that Scotchman ironworker with that particular asset code was traded in for a different model during that 1920 year, but it hadn't yet come off the asset listing. And then there were 23 instances where the visible tag, the asset tag, was not on there. So what we recommended was that, make sure to review the asset listing on an ongoing basis to ensure that, sold and scrapped items get taken off there. Put a procedure in place, to make sure that you're keeping track of all those items. And at year end, when you get and do your reports that they're not there. And implement a procedure where those items that are tagged have that tag on it, whether at year end you do a sample or you have a full inventory done or some sort, just to make sure that those items have the tags on them. All right, next one.
Sure. One thing I just wanted to say, sorry, I was muted there. I hear from some folks that I don't know where to put the tag on this item, and we've tried to standardize as to on a refrigerator, inside the door or something, try to standardize where those go. Security cameras are, one thing too that folks question, where they're so small, where do I put the tag? And it's like, well, let's find a standardized spot. So that was the feedback that I received on that recommendation, was that they just don't know sometimes where to put them on the items, but we're working through that.
Okay. The capitalization of the assets. So this basically, when we looked at the 0.2 and the 0.4 accounts on the transactions on the general ledger, in looking to see what was actually purchased during the year. We wanted to say, okay, is everything that's over those capitalization thresholds that is purchased on the fixed asset listing? And we noted 6 instances of assets not being included in the capital asset listing that should have been. And so the capital assets were understated by 100,000. And we also looked at the 619 as well. And there were 2 assets there for 16,000 that were not included on the listing. So, again, we recommend a procedure to ensure that all purchases that are over the capitalization threshold be properly identified and reported within the capital asset listing at year end, whether it be tagging them and identifying them at the time of purchase, putting something in the purchase order to say, hello, this is a fixed asset, or, just putting something there that lets you know.
All right. What we did on that, Heather, is obviously we jumped right into this as soon as we got the draft report, trying to work away at these things. One thing that we've done is our accounts payable clerk, when she gets a purchase order and the items come in and they're coded to the 0.2 or the 0.4 and they hit those thresholds, her with some of the building account clerks, we've developed an email group. And so they will scan a copy of that PO to our inventory clerk, so they can then go to that site and tag that item. And then that asset tag number is written on the copy of that PO and sent back to the business office for input into the system.
Good.
So, yeah, I continually, I have to remind them that they have to keep up on this.
Yep.
And if our accounts payable clerk does not get the purchase order back with the tag number, she alerts me, and then I go out and I say, okay, come on, we gotta get this tagged now, so. So I
Okay.
think the system, we'll see, hopefully it'll work, yes.
So consistency with the external financial statements, when we compared everything, there was a minor discrepancy within the machinery and equipment for $37,000. Not a huge discrepancy, but maybe having a full valuation and then adjusting your books to be what that full valuation is, because those are what you have at that point in time, and then you know that it matches. That would be, I mean, a good thing to do every several years, just to have that done anyway. And reviewing and updating policies. So when we looked at the capitalization policy, we also noted that there were a few policies that hadn't been updated or reviewed in several years. And we're just going to recommend that, every year, review those policies and see if they need to be updated, see if they need to be tweaked a little bit, or, if there's some type of like uniform guidance requires an update in your procurement policy. Are we there? Do we have what we need to have in our procurement policy to meet that? So it's a good rule of thumb just to review those on an ongoing basis too.
Right. Thank you, Heather.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, so let me just flip over here. I did put together, a response, like I was mentioning as Heather was presenting the report. Some of these things we jumped right on and we got into the capitalization threshold. An annual review will be completed to be sure that the assets not meeting the threshold are not included. The existence and identification of assets. Again, with our accounts payable department, we've set up a group, an email group to email those purchase orders so the inventory clerk can tag those and get that information back so that can be entered into the system. And that goes along with the next one too, the capitalization of assets. We will explore having a full valuation done to include the land. You're right, it's been, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years since we've done that. So probably time to explore that. And reviewing and updating the policies, we will do so to determine, if an update's appropriate. So,
Perfect.
Are there any questions from anyone for Heather, Spencer, or I?
I just have one. I know she talked about the assets that weren't on the list. Are we going back and trying to find assets that we didn't catch prior to this, or how's that working?
Yes. So what we did was ones like from last year.
I mean, I don't know how far back, if that was done 4 years ago, then I guess it'd be the last 4 years.
Right. So what we did was anything that, was from this past year, 1920.
Okay, so
and back. Yeah.
we went back 1 year. Okay.
Yeah.
You also have to take into consideration the value and the depreciation and,
Right.
What's the cost benefit? You don't really want to go back more than 1 or 2 years. They're going to be like halfway depreciated.
I know how cumbersome it is. I've done it. I know how cumbersome it is. I agree.
Okay. If there's no further questions for the Bonadio group, then I will say thank you to them and you guys can enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great. You guys have a wonderful night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Second item on the agenda is to review our claims audit exception reports for the period of January through March. So these are our general fund for that period. We had 865 checks issued during that period. And you can see the handful or so of the items that were found by our internal claims auditor. No shipping on the PO seemed to be a popular thing during this period. Some of the mileage, sometimes there's confusion with the mileage for folks. they're supposed to deduct what we call commuting miles. So like your normal mileage that you would incur to and from work, that's your responsibility. And anything beyond that, that you travel for business, of course, we reimburse. So there's some confusion with that. So that's why that's listed on there. And then moving on to our special aid fund, 136 checks, and there was one discrepancy. They added an item to the order, but they cannot do that without prior approval. So that was found, and the individual that did that was spoken to and given, the direction as to how to handle that going forward.
Melanie, what's the criteria for adding an item to an order? I'm just curious. Sometimes we run into that. Is it based on dollar amount or as a percentage of the total purchase order, or what?
Any amount that exceeds the purchase order, the original amount, whether it be the quantity or the total amount of the purchase order. Or, if it's a line item, let's say they order 10 widgets and the company accidentally sends 20, and the department says, well, gosh, I can really use these 20, so I'll just save them. It'll save me from having to order more again. So then they'll just put in, 20, and no, they have to get prior approval for that.
What's the approval process? Is there a criteria that you use to that determines whether or not you'll grant approval? Is it just on a case-by-case basis?
It is a case-by-case basis. And it depends, if the person calls me and says, like the widget example, I only ordered 10, but they sent me 20, and I would have to order 10 more in another month or two anyway. And if the budget can support it, they have enough money in their budget line, and there's a good rationale as to why they need it, then yes, we do approve that. But it's taken on a case-by-case basis. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that often. It's a very rare case.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the claims audit exceptions? Okay. All right. Well, with that then, it is 6:20. So if there's no other questions or anything, we will adjourn.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
See
Thanks.
everybody at 7.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Meeting's over?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Sheldon. Bye.